Hello, my friends. Welcome back. I am so glad you are here with me today. So settle in, get comfortable, and let your imagination travel with me. Because today we are going to meet someone extraordinary. A woman who carried test tubes in her coat pockets. A woman whose notebooks are still radioactive today. That if you want to read them in a Paris library, you must first sign a form. You must accept the risk. You must wear protective gloves, just to turn the pages. That is the kind of life she lived. That is the kind of work she did. She did not know what was killing her. She only knew she had to keep going. Her name was Marie Curie. And her story is one of the most extraordinary in the history of science. Not because of what she discovered, but because of what she was willing to sacrifice to discover it. If you enjoy learning English through stories like this, please subscribe to Timeless English. Every week we bring you a beautiful new story in slow, clear, simple English. Poland. 18. Picture a cold gray city. Wide stone streets. Heavy winter coat. The smell of coal smoke in the air. And everywhere, a feeling of occupation. Russia controlled Poland. The Russian government told Polish people what language to speak, what history to teach their children, what they were allowed to believe about their own country. Polish culture was being slowly erased into this occupied city. On November 1867, a baby girl was born. Her name was Maria Skłodowska. The world would later know her as Marie Curie. Her father was a physics and mathematics teacher. Her mother ran a school for girls. They were educated people. They believed in learning. They filled their small apartment with books. And young Maria absorbed everything. She could read by the age of 4. At 4 years old, she would pick up a book and read it aloud. Her parents were amazed. But life was hard. Her mother became ill. The family struggled with money. When Maria was 10 years old, her mother died. And when Maria was 12, her older sister Zofia died. 2 devastating losses. Before she was a teenager, Maria became quiet, serious. She threw herself into her books, into studying, into mathematics and science, as if learning could fill the empty spaces inside her, as if knowledge could make sense of a world that had taken so much from her. In those years, universities did not accept women, not officially. A woman could not simply walk into a lecture hall and take a seat. She was not permitted. But some people refused to accept this. A group of teachers and students created something secret. They called it the floating university. No fixed location. Classes moved from apartment to apartment, from private house to private house. Each week a different address. Each week a different group of students gathering quietly, hoping not to be noticed by Russian authorities. Young Maria attended these secret classes. She sat in strangers' apartments. She listened to lectures on science and mathematics and literature. She took careful notes. She was learning in secret, at risk, because she believed that knowledge was worth that risk. And already you can see what she would become. The kind of person who does not accept impossible. The kind of person who finds a way, even when every door is closed. Maria had a dream. She wanted to study at a real university, a proper university, with laboratories and professors and real equipment. The best option for Polish women in those years. The Sorbonne University in Paris accepted women, but Paris was expensive. The journey was expensive, and the family had almost no money. Maria had an older sister named Bronia. Bronia also wanted to study. She wanted to be a doctor. And so the two sisters made an agreement, a remarkable agreement. Maria would work first. She would find a job as a governess, looking after wealthy children. She would send all her earnings to Bronia in Paris to support Bronia's medical studies. And when Bronia qualified as a doctor, when Bronia began to earn money, Bronia would support Maria so that Maria could go to Paris. And this agreement would take years. Maria worked as a governess in the Polish countryside, far from the city, far from books, far from everything she loved. She got up early every morning. She taught other people's children. She ate simple meals. She sent almost every coin she earned to her sister in Paris. She was lonely. She was far from home. And in the evenings when the children were asleep, she studied by herself. Physics. Keeping her mind alive while her body was trapped. Waiting. Patiently waiting for her turn. Paris, 1809. Maria was 23 years old. She stepped off the train. She looked around at the great city. She had almost no money. She found a tiny apartment in the Latin Quarter, a single room, so cold in winter that the water in her wash basin froze overnight. She wore all her clothes at the same time to keep warm. She sometimes fainted from hunger because she could not afford food. She was too poor to buy coal for heating. But every morning she put on her coat, and she walked to the Sorbonne, and she sat in the lecture halls, among hundreds of students, almost all of them men, and she listened, and she took notes, and she worked. She worked harder than almost anyone around her. Not because she was naturally more gifted, but because she understood something they perhaps did not. She understood what it had cost to be here. The years of teaching other people's children, the cold evenings studying alone, the sister who had sacrificed first. Every lecture was a gift she had earned. Every equation was something she had waited years to learn. She did not waste a single moment. In 1893, she took the examination in physics. She passed first in her class. The following year, she took the examination in mathematics. She passed second in her class. A young woman from Warsaw, who had grown up under occupation, who had attended secret classes in strangers' apartments, who had frozen and starved in a Paris attic. First, in physics, part 5 PR, and then, in 1894, Maria met a man. His name was Pierre Curie. Pierre was a physicist. Quiet, thoughtful, deeply devoted to science. He had already done important work on crystals and magnetism. He was remarkable. But he had never met anyone quite like Maria. They talked for hours about science, about physics, about the nature of matter, about the questions that neither of them could stop thinking about. He fell in love with her. She was uncertain at first. She was thinking of returning to Poland, of working for her country. Pierre wrote her letters, passionate letters. He said, "It would be a beautiful thing to pass through life together, hypnotized by our dreams, your patriotic dream, our humanitarian dream, and our scientific dream." Maria stayed in Paris. They married in 1809. A simple ceremony. No wedding dress. She wore a dark blue suit. She would wear it in the laboratory for years afterward. Two scientists, beginning their life together, neither of them knowing what was coming. The year is 1897. Marie Curie needed a topic for her doctoral thesis, a doctor's degree. The first woman to pursue a doctoral degree in physics in France. She chose to investigate something that had recently been discovered, something mysterious, something that no one yet understood. A German scientist named Wilhelm R. Nengen had discovered X-rays, rays that could pass through solid matter, through flesh, through wood. And a French scientist named Henri Becquerel had discovered that uranium, a heavy metallic element, emitted its own rays, without any external source of energy, without light, without heat, without anything. The uranium simply radiated on its own. Most scientists noted this discovery and moved on. It was interesting, but they did not know what to do with it. Marie Curie looked at this discovery, and she could not let it go. Where was the energy coming from? The uranium was emitting radiation continuously, without losing mass, without any visible power source. This violated everything scientists thought they knew. This was impossible. Unless the energy was coming from inside the atom itself. Unless the atom was not the indivisible, unchanging particle everyone believed it to be. Unless the universe was stranger than anyone had imagined. Marie Curie began to investigate. Père Théâtre said the university gave Marie a space to work. A shed. A leaking wooden shed, with a dirt floor. In winter it was so cold she could see her own breath. In summer it was so hot the air was thick and difficult to breathe. The equipment was basic. The conditions were primitive. But Marie Curie did not complain. She and Pierre worked together. They tested different substances. They measured the radiation from different elements. Marie was systematic, precise, patient. She discovered that two elements, thorium and uranium, both produced this mysterious radiation. She coined a word for this property, radioactivity, a word she invented that is now used in every language on Earth. And then she discovered something that changed everything. She was testing a mineral called pitchblende, a black ore found in the Earth. And the radiation from pitchblende was stronger, much stronger than it should have been. If uranium alone was responsible for the radioactivity, then something else was in there. Something unknown. Something new. An element that had never been discovered before. Part Radioactivity. Marie and Pierre worked for 4 years. 4 years of processing tons of pitchblende, boiling it, dissolving it, filtering it, crystallizing it, over and over, ton after ton, to isolate a tiny amount of a new element, a fraction of a gram, from tons of ore. Marie's hands were constantly burned, cracked, scarred, from the chemicals she worked with daily. She did not know then that the radioactivity itself was also damaging her. Silently, entering her body with every breath, with every hour she spent in that shed. In 1898 they announced their discovery. A new element. Marie named it after her homeland, Poland. Polonium. And then, a few months later, another discovery. An even more powerfully radioactive element. They named it radium, the glowing thing. Because in the darkness of their laboratory, the concentrated radium they had isolated glowed, a faint blue-green light. Marie later wrote about this. She described going to the laboratory at night, just to see the glow. She called it fairy lights. She did not know. She could not have known that those fairy lights were killing her. Teatchi World Condies. In 1903, Marie Curie became the first woman to receive a doctorate in physics in France. In 1903, she also received the Nobel Prize in Physics, together with Pierre and Henri Becquerel, for their research into radiation. She was the first woman ever to receive a Nobel Prize. But the Nobel Committee initially did not want to include her. They wanted to give the prize to Pierre and Becquerel alone. Pierre refused. He told them that Marie's contribution was at least equal to his own. That without her this work would not have been done. The committee agreed. Marie Curie's name was included. But even in this moment of triumph, she was being treated as secondary, as someone who needed to be defended, even by the man who loved her. She accepted it quietly and continued working. L'OSS, April 19, 96. A rainy afternoon in Paris. Pierre Curie was crossing a street. He slipped. He fell. A horse-drawn wagon ran over him. He died instantly. The wheels crushed his skull. He was 46 years old. Marie was 38. She received the news, and she did not speak for days. She could not eat. She could not sleep. She wrote in her diary. She wrote to Pierre as if he could still hear her. She wrote, "What can I do now? How can I live? How can I work? What is the point of anything?" Her friends were afraid she would not survive this grief, that she would simply stop. But she did not stop. She was offered Pierre's professorship at the Sorbonne. She accepted. She became the first female professor at the Sorbonne. In the history of the university, on the day of her first lecture, the lecture hall was completely full. students standing in the aisles. People crowded outside trying to hear through the windows. Everyone waiting to hear the first woman ever to teach at the Sorbonne. She walked in. She sat down. She picked up exactly where Pierre had left his last lecture. The same sentence, the same words, as if continuing something that had only been briefly interrupted. The audience was silent. And then they applauded. They applauded for a long time. The Nobel Prize in 1911, Marie Curie won the Nobel Prize again, this time in chemistry, for the discovery of radium and polonium, and the isolation of radium. She became the first person in history, and to this day still one of only a very few people, to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different sciences. But even this achievement, even this extraordinary honor, was shadowed by difficulty. The same year, a scandal erupted in the French press. Newspapers accused Marie of having a romantic relationship with a colleague, Paul Langevin. He was a married man, a student and friend of Pierre's. The French press was brutal. They called her a foreigner. They called her a homewrecker. They wrote terrible things about her. Some people wrote to the Nobel Committee, asking them to withdraw the prize, or asking Marie not to attend the ceremony. The Nobel Committee asked her to consider staying home. Marie Curie wrote back. She said, "The prize has been awarded to me for the discovery of radium and polonium. I see no connection between my scientific work and the facts of my private life." She went to Stockholm. She received the prize. She gave her lecture. She stood there, alone, and she accepted the honor she had earned. When the First World War began in 1914, Marie Curie immediately thought of a way to help. She knew that X-rays could help doctors find bullets and shrapnel inside wounded soldiers. But the X-ray equipment was in hospitals, and the wounded soldiers were in the field, far from hospitals, dying before they could be moved. Marie Curie developed mobile X-ray units. She put X-ray machines into vehicles, vans that could drive to the battlefield, directly to the wounded soldiers. She called them petites Curies, little Curies. She personally drove one of these vans to the front lines. She trained women to operate them. She set up over 200 X-ray stations across France. It is estimated that over 1 million soldiers were treated using these mobile units during the war. 1 million people who might have died, who lived because of her. And all the while, she was absorbing more radiation, more and more, without knowing what it was doing to her. By the 1930s, Marie Curie was becoming very ill. She had lost weight. Her hands were damaged beyond repair. Her vision was failing. She suffered from constant pain. The doctors did not immediately understand why. Radiation sickness was not yet a recognized condition. The danger of radioactivity was not yet fully understood. Marie herself believed for many years that radioactivity was harmless. She had spent her career surrounded by it. She had carried radioactive substances in her coat pockets She had kept glowing radioactive samples beside her bed at night. She had tasted radioactive materials to check their purity, not knowing, not suspect, that the beautiful glowing substance she had discovered was slowly destroying her blood cells, eating away at her bone marrow, taking her apart from the inside. She died on July 4th, 9th, of aplastic anemia, a condition caused by radiation exposure. She was 66 years old. The thing she had spent her life studying had killed her. But before it did, she had given it to the world, and the world used it. Radium was used to treat cancer. Radioactive tracers helped doctors diagnose diseases. X-ray technology based on her work saved countless lives. The understanding of radioactivity led to nuclear medicine, to radiation therapy, to treatments that today save millions of lives every year. She did not know she was sacrificing herself. But every day she walked into that laboratory, every hour she spent with those glowing test tubes, she was paying with her health, with her life, so that others might be saved. Omuist Shachi Lefty Band Marie Curie's notebooks are still radioactive. They will be radioactive for another 1,500 years. She is buried in Paris, in the Pantheon, a great monument where France honors its greatest citizens. She was the first woman to be buried there, in her own right, for her own work. She is the only person in history to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different sciences. She opened doors for women in science that had been closed for centuries. She showed that brilliance has no gender, that patience and precision and passion are more powerful than the limitations others place on you. But she was also human. She was lonely after Pierre died. She struggled. She made mistakes. She was sometimes difficult to know. She was not a saint. She was a person who had a gift, and chose to give everything for it. Think about the girl in Warsaw, the girl who attended secret classes in strangers' apartments, who worked for years to send money to her sister, who froze in a Paris attic, who worked in a leaking shed, who kept going when her husband died, who attended a Nobel Prize ceremony while newspapers were writing terrible things about her. What kept her going? Not certain, not comfort, not the belief that things would work out. She kept going because she believed the work mattered, because she was curious, because she had decided that the questions she was asking were worth the cost of asking them. This is something we can learn from. Not to sacrifice our health as she did. She did not know the danger, but the quality of her attention, the patience of her work, the refusal to accept that she did not belong. These things we can carry with us. Today, when you learn English, some days it will feel cold, like a Paris attic in winter. Some days it will feel like working in a leaking shed, like processing tons of ore to find a fraction of a gram of understanding. But Marie Curie worked in that shed for 4 years, before she had something to show for it. And what she had to show for it changed the world. Your English is building the same way. Slowly, quietly, often invisibly, ton by ton. Graham, keep working. Keep learning. The glow is coming. Thank you for listening to this story today. I hope it stayed with you. I hope it gave you something to feel, not just something to know. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like. And if you want to join us every week for more stories like this, please subscribe to Timeless English. Until next time, my friends, keep learning, keep listening, and keep enjoying the beautiful journey of English.